I think we'll begin. We have all of our committee here. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Planning Committee. I'm Liz Schell, Chair of the Planning Committee. With us, our Vice Chair, Councillor Neal. We have Councillor Osanek, Councillor McLaren, and Councillor Turner. We're all back for night 3. We have a number of city staff. I'd like to welcome back our clerk, Derek O'Shea, who's been off for a few months. So it's very nice to have him back in this committee clerk seat. We have our Director Agnew and Manager Vendetti on this side, and on this side our City Solicitor Ray, Planner Argawal, Planner Sands, Planner Chu, and Planner CFAT. And with that, I will read the customary planning meeting introduction, since we have a number of public meetings this evening. Notice of collection. Personal information collected as a result of the public hearing and on the forms provided at the back of the room is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes, which will be available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning, Building, and Licensing Services. The purpose of public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant, committee members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be opened to the public for comments and questions. Interested persons are requested to give their name and address for recording in the minutes. There is also a sign-in sheet for interested members of the public at the back of the room. No decisions are made at public meetings concerning applications unless otherwise noted. The public meeting is held to gather public opinion. Exemption to this rule is outlined in Bylaw Number 2006-75 to delegate various planning approvals to staff and to adopt certain procedures for the processing of planning applications subject to delegated authority. Council has authorized staff to use discretion in determining if an application can be a combined public meeting comprehensive report to expedite the approval process. We do have a combined public meeting comprehensive report for a zoning bylaw amendment to 271 Glencastle Road. A decision will be made at the regular portion of the Planning Committee meeting tonight. Information gathered at public meetings is then referred back to Planning, Building, and Licensing Services staff for the preparation of a comprehensive report and recommendation to Planning Committee. This means that after the meeting tonight, staff will be considering the comments made by the public in their further review of the applications. When this review is completed, a report will be prepared making a recommendation for action to this committee. The recommendation is typically to approve or to deny. This committee then makes a recommendation on the applications to City Council. City Council has the final say on the applications from the city's perspective. Following council decision, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act, and anyone with an interest in the matter may file an appeal. Interested persons are advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. And actually, we have another councillor in the room tonight. Councillor Stroud is with us as well. So our very first piece of business is a public meeting. Applicant is the City of Kingston, zoning bylaw amendment, and Ms. Argawal will be introduced by our Director of Planning.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So we have 2 public meetings this evening that are being initiated by staff. One is to do with the removal of the conversion provisions from Bylaw 8499. The second one is to do with looking at the 2015 study that was done on amenity space related to multi-residential buildings. And we're also looking at establishing an amenity space requirement potentially for 1- and 2-unit dwellings. These 2 public meetings are coming forward in the timing that was committed to council as part of the interim control bylaw report that was before council at the beginning of May. So I just wanted to make that clear. These are 2 public meetings. We will be bringing back a comprehensive report at a subsequent meeting. So we're looking for feedback tonight, but wanted to make sure that it was clear that these are 2 follow-up recommendations coming from the interim control bylaw, and we'll be happy to take questions after the public meetings are done.
Thank you. And we will have them as two separate meetings. We won't join them together. So the first public meeting is on zoning bylaw amendment. Ms. Argawal will present, and then I'll ask the committee for questions, and then members of the public. And then we'll go on to the second meeting and do the same. So, Ms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is the first of the two city-initiated public meetings for zoning bylaw amendment for tonight. So this one is an amendment to zoning bylaw number 8499. The area regulated by this bylaw is shown in yellow on this slide. So zoning bylaw 8499 contains two sets of provisions that allow for the conversion of a one-family dwelling into a multiple-family dwelling or a two-family dwelling. Section 5.23 is regarding conversion of a one-family to a multiple-family dwelling, and it applies to the A, A3, A4, A5, B, E, and C zones. And Section 5.23, which relates to the conversion of a one-family dwelling to a two-family dwelling, applies to the A, B, and E zones. I would just like to note that in the case of Section 5.23, it creates special rules for one-family dwellings that are located in the A, A3, A4, A5 zones where a multiple-family dwelling is not permitted as new construction. However, these sections do create some special rules that do allow for a conversion of a one-family dwelling to a multiple-family dwelling in these zones. This table shows a side-by-side comparison of the two sets of provisions which apply to a one-family dwelling as it relates to Section 523 and 523A. In order to permit a one-family dwelling to be converted into a multiple-family dwelling, the requirements in Section 5.23 relate to the date of construction. So the dwelling must have been constructed before December 1st of 1941. However, there is no such requirement in Section 5.23A. With respect to the parking spaces required, if the dwelling is located in the B zone, one parking space per dwelling unit is required. However, if the one family dwelling to be converted is located in the A, A3, A4, A5, E, or the C zone, and is being converted to less than 4 units, one parking space for each 2 dwelling units is required. And if the dwelling is being converted into 5 or more units, one parking space per dwelling unit is required. As compared to conversion of a one family to a 2 family dwelling, Section 5.23A, the parking requirement is 1 space per dwelling unit. No changes are permitted to the floor area or the roof line of a building that is proposed to be converted into a multiple family dwelling. However, Section 5.23A does permit some type of additional floor space permitted if a dwelling is being converted into 2 dwellings instead of a multiple family dwelling. There are also minimum amenity area requirements that are applicable to a dwelling if it's being converted into a multiple family dwelling. However, there are no such requirements for a conversion into a 2-unit dwelling. There are also some requirements related to the number of dwelling units with 1 or more separate bedrooms to dwelling units with no separate bedrooms for a conversion to a multiple family dwelling. There are minimum total floor area per unit requirements in relation to the number of bedrooms, and these are applicable to both of the sections. For a one-family dwelling to be converted into a multiple family dwelling, it must contain a floor area of at least 232 square meters, but there are no floor area requirements for conversion to a 2-unit dwelling. For conversion to a 2-unit dwelling, however, there are minimum lot area requirement, which is 370 square meters per unit. However, there are no such requirements if a dwelling is being converted into a multiple family dwelling. So in some ways, some of these rules create they make it easier for a one-family dwelling to be converted into a multiple-family dwelling because there are no floor area requirements. But it's harder if you wanted to convert a one-family dwelling into a two-family dwelling. So the purpose and effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to remove sections 5.23 and 5.23A from the zoning bylaw. And as a result of this amendment, any conversion of a one-family dwelling into a two-family or a multiple-family dwelling would be required to meet the same zoning requirements as if it was new construction. So this is a summary of the proposed amendments. We are proposing to delete sections 5.23 and 5.23A in their entirety. And then there are also some related changes because there are some other sections of the bylaw that refer to these sections. So that's why there are some other amendments proposed. The first one is amending section 5.3A related to off-street vehicle parking facilities. So just removing the text that refers to conversions of dwellings. There's also one section which applies to the conversion of a one-family dwelling into multiple family dwellings and how it relates to parking. So that section is proposed to be removed in its entirety. Also amending the permitted uses in the A zone, which refer to the conversion of a one-family dwelling into a two-family dwelling. And then again, removing the reference to section 5.23. Again, this is applicable to the A zone and just removing the reference to that section because those sections are being proposed to be removed in their entirety. And that concludes my presentations, and I'd be happy to take comments. I just wanted to also mention that notice regarding this application was provided in accordance with the Planning Act, and to date, I have not received any written correspondence regarding this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from the committee? Councillor Neal.
This may be a question for senior staff, planning staff. I'm curious because we talked about the potential of OMB appeals and that kind of thing. Now, and at what point that might trigger the need for an interim control bylaw. On something like this proposal that's in front of us and the next proposal, as I understand it, if anybody comes, these won't be retroactive. So anybody who comes before planning with a request under the existing non-modified zoning could carry on their proposal, could bring their proposal forward. Is that accurate?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So that's correct. Until we move to a place in the process where we have a comprehensive report that's considered by Planning Committee and then pulled forward to Council, similar to any type of policy amendment, following a Council decision, if it's supportive of the amendments that we're requesting, there would be the 20-day appeal period to the OMB, after which point, if there are no appeals, then the bylaw comes into effect and the policy changes are in effect. So anything that's filed now is evaluated against the current policy that's in effect.
And that current policy continues as the functioning policy through any OMB appeal as well?
That's correct.
Could you give us some assurance that in the event that something like this comes forward, that you could contact the district councillor so we're aware that there's something potentially is jumping the queue as far as this goes? Do you understand what I mean? So if a proposal comes to the planners under the existing bylaw and it looks as if it wouldn't succeed under the proposed amendment, could you let the district councillors know?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Other questions from the committee? I have one about the 1941 provision. That came up a few years ago at Planning Committee. So I gather this has been under study for quite a while, the idea of getting rid of this 1941 date as a separate, getting rid of that zoning bylaw provision for the 1941 and before.
So through you, Madam Chair, yes, there was a previous public meeting held regarding this in 2013. However, at that time, it was thought that this could be rolled into the new zoning bylaw project. Regarding the 1941 date, we really don't know where it comes from, but in looking at previous zoning bylaws that applied to the former city of Kingston, there was a bylaw that was passed in December of 1941. It may relate to that, but I'm not 100% sure, but yeah.
Thank you. So basically what this is moving forward with something that was already in the works. This was part of the zoning bylaw consolidation work that's already been being done. We're just moving it forward.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to open this to members of the public. I'll invite Mr. Councillor Stroud if you had some questions as a courtesy to our councillor member.
Thank you. I think I know this, Chair. I guess this is probably a question for the senior planners. Just for the benefit of my constituents that are here present and may follow this issue, without going into specifics, but knowing that there was a situation that caused some concern because it did not trigger a planning approval process or a public meeting. It just sort of started happening. The construction started happening in the neighborhood. It was an addition to a 6-bedroom house, an addition of 6 more bedrooms. That, in my understanding, is not relevant, would not have been a conversion that was as of right. It was a different as of right project. Is that correct?
Yes, and through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. So the situation that you're referencing, that was facilitated by way of the parent zoning that's on the property, allowing 1 and 2 units. It actually wasn't a conversion as it's defined under the bylaw. So
for context, how often in the center of the city where 8499 applies, how many of these conversions might we see in a year through building permits?
I would say typically we don't see that many anymore. I think these are provisions of the bylaw that historically were used more often, but I think what we're seeing now is in a lot of cases a more intensified residential use that needs to be facilitated by either zoning amendment, or in the case of the other example we were talking about, had parent zoning that allowed a large enough building envelope to facilitate it. So it's not something that we see a ton of, but it is something that Planning Department has had intention of removing those policies for quite some time, and we're just accelerating that to being done as part of the suite of recommendations coming in out of the interim control bylaw instead of waiting for the comprehensive zoning to be finalized.
Okay, well, it seems like a good idea to me. The situation where as of right intensification, I guess to call it, like addition of bedrooms as an as of right situation, is what causes the increase of density without a planning approval, sort of to surprise the neighborhood, is more likely to cause a backlash, as we saw on that one. So I would guess then that there is other ways to address this, and that was in the original report that came out of the ICBL.
Yes, and through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. So as a planning team, we're reviewing a suite of recommendations that will, in aggregate, have the intended effect of trying to create a greater sense of stability in the neighborhoods that were identified in the study. This is one step of that. The amenity space, which will be the second public meeting to follow, that has a component that staff is introducing as an additional way of creating some requirements on the property for landscape open space, and we're open to taking other suggestions at this time. But the really detailed work is going to be facilitated through the central the city central intensification study. We need a better name for it because I can't ever get it out. We're thinking about one, but essentially through that land use study, which is going to take place over the next year or so, we're going to be bringing the terms of reference to council in August for that. We're going to be looking in detail at a number of performance standards in the zoning that exist in 8499 and looking how they correlate to one another and looking at how we can maybe take a bit of a different approach going forward that is more relative to the size of the lot. So as opposed to just one set standard for lots that could be of any size in an area, we're looking at something that may be proportionally related to the size of the property fabric.
Right, and you're referring to that new study. Now, just to clarify for members present, that study you're referring to was what was triggered by the report that came as a result of the ICBL. Was there another land use study already planned and that is also in the works?
Thank you, and through you. So outside of the comprehensive zoning bylaw, what we had identified in Schedule 13 of the official plan update was looking at a secondary plan or a special study in and around the near campus neighborhoods. Through the conversations with the community and council on the interim control bylaw issue, what we did is we allowed that study to morph a little bit to include a greater scope of work than what we were previously anticipating. So that's now been consolidated into one study.
Right, so there really is one study underway, and it has a name that you can't remember, but it has central in it. Okay, thank you.
That's correct.
Questions from the committee? Then I'd like to open the floor to members of the public. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this zoning bylaw amendment proposal? Mr. Dixon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Frank Dixon, 495 Alfred, Apartment 2, K7K, 4J4. So I read through this, and I think staff are on the right track with a very complicated problem. If I could just add a comment, there's some discussion on the 1941 and the background of that. I think that was having to do with the World War II era, and there's a lot of new housing being built at the time just with the expansion of the wartime economy. So that's, you take that for what it's worth. And I'm agreeing with the Director of Planning on her analysis of the as-of-right privilege may be workable in certain situations. It's hard to sort of know, when to draw the line. I mean, if you want to add on, a couple of bedrooms to a 6-bedroom house, that might be okay if the size of the lot is, large enough. But you don't want to have an entire, 8 or 10 or 12 bedroom house added onto the back of other houses. I was walking around down in the student area today looking at this, and it's amazing, what's there. I mean, you have, maybe 20 or to 30 bedrooms sometimes on a lot with a very deep backyard, right? That was, say put there in 1890 or 1910 or whatever. And we've just kind of allowed this to happen. We didn't really have a way of dealing with it, so I'm thanking staff for their efforts and also council for paying attention to this. Thank you.
Thank you. You're on.
Don Mitchell, 43 Gibson Avenue. I just wanted to lift up a couple of things. I think we're all very optimistic, and I'm grateful to my counselor for clarifying a few things. The as of right, the inconsistencies and the bypassing of public consultation, I think are really important aspects, because we've seen it play out time and time again where people are surprised. In this, it references the official plan, and I'm a little bit confused, and you don't have to clarify this for me tonight, but we're doing this comprehensive zoning bylaw, and there may be changes to the zoning of my property or something. We may be simplifying the A zoning stuff, and I don't know how that'll impact my house. And it may not matter. The official plan has this update, right, and it's not passed yet officially or something. It's gone to the province, and so as all of this unfolds and it's fluid, I just wonder about the impacts and changes on my house, and it might help to sort of have some understanding of that in general for the average person. But in section 2.7.3 of the official plan, that was in this report, it does this summary list of potential adverse effects, and it gets into things like shadowing, loss of privacy, increased levels of noise, et cetera, et cetera. For a homeowner, those are the types of things when there is no disclosure, when a project occurs right next door to you, that really people lose their mind. And so I just wondered what quantitative or qualitative measurements, how do you measure our neighborhood? And I live in Sydenham District, so obviously that is changing all the time due to the growth of the institutions. So I wouldn't mind also seeing at some point some understanding of how you measure our neighborhoods for what the potential adverse effects are. But overall, in the people that I've talked to, I think even though this may be a small piece of a larger aspiration to build some stronger control for some of us, I think people that I've talked to were very positive, optimistic, and I found the report itself actually pretty easy to get through and to understand. I thought the explanations were good, so thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment before I ask Ms. Argowal to respond? Seeing none. Do you have some comments on the questions and comments you've heard?
Thank you for your comments. With respect to measuring, how do you measure a neighborhood qualitatively or quantitatively? I think I will respond to this in my comprehensive report. I don't have a good answer for you right now. I can't think of a good answer for you right now, but that's something definitely that we can address in the comprehensive report. And like Paige mentioned, we will also be undertaking the City Central Infill and Growth Strategy Study, which will be looking at these type of things in further detail. Thank you.
Thanks. Can I just, oops, sorry. Go ahead. Okay, well, it was just that basically this is a technical thing that we're doing, and the study that you were discussing is going to discuss these much broader aspects of the neighborhood.
Yep.
Thank you, and through you. So on the issue and how we measure, and as Sukriti indicated, as part of the City Central intensification study, we're looking at having 3 or 4 distinct deliverables that we want to achieve as part of that. Again, linking some of the work that we talked about in the interim control bylaw discussions, and one of the key deliverables that will come from that study will be architectural guidelines that are established for neighborhoods. So it's something that in greater detail than anything we've ever had before will help control built form on a go-forward basis. It will provide us with a framework to help us make decisions related to built form to ensure compatibility. And compatibility is our key tool of measurement through the official plan. That's section 2.7 that's referenced when we look at measuring one form of development against what's existing. So for us, we're in the process of developing that scope of work right now. I imagine what's going to take place will be a lot of ground truthing, walking the streets, the neighborhoods, photographing them, identifying key architectural features related to certain blocks or areas, and those are the types of things that are going to be informing our work going forward. And as part of that work, we will be establishing, similar to the process that we followed for North Kingstown, a community working group that will be working alongside staff the entire time. And that's something where, as residents of the area, you can really help us to define what's important to you in terms of the look and feel of your neighborhood. You may have a key sense of history of how your neighborhood is developed, and those are the types of things that we'll be working on through that land use study as well.
Thank you. That sounds great. Any more questions from the committee? Seeing none, I will close this public meeting, and you'll be leading the next one, Ms. Argowal?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So the second public meeting has to do with zoning bylaw amendment, the amenity area review study, final report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the second of the city-initiated zoning bylaw amendments. The proposed amendment is intended to implement the recommendations of the amenity area review study final report that was completed in January of 2015 by Dillon Consulting Limited. This report was presented to the Planning Committee on April 2nd, 2015, and it was received by Council in April of 2015. Additionally, the amendment also proposes new landscaped open space requirements in the residential zones where they do not currently exist. The primary purpose of the amenity area review was to recommend revisions to the existing policies in the official plan and regulations in the 5 principal zoning bylaws for the provision of amenity areas in multi-unit residential development. So this study did not look at 1 and 2 family dwellings, only looked at multiple family dwellings. As part of that review, as part of the amenity area study, a review of the existing 5 zoning bylaws was undertaken, and the review identified that there were 3 typologies of amenity areas in the city zoning bylaws. So with respect to zoning bylaw number 8499 that applies to the former city of Kingston, it requires amenity area, it requires children's play space, but there are no landscape open space requirements. And in this bylaw, the amenity area requirements as well as the children's play space requirements are based on a per bedroom unit. In the case of the downtown and harbor zoning bylaw, there are amenity area requirements that are again based on a per bedroom basis. However, the children's play space requirements are based on a per unit basis, and there are no landscaped open space requirements in the zoning bylaw. Zoning bylaw 7626 that regulates the former township of Kingston has play space requirements that are based on the percentage of lot area in certain zones only, and there are also landscape open space requirements which generally apply to the residential zones. The Carroll Rockaway North zoning bylaw does not have any requirements related to amenity area, landscape open space, or children's play space. And zoning bylaw number 3274, which applies to the former township of Pittsburgh, only has landscape open space requirements. There are no requirements related to amenity area or play space. So one of the recommendations of the amenity area review study was to use one consistent definition of amenity area in the city's official plan and the zoning bylaw. So they recommended that amenity area be defined as an outdoor area exterior to the residential building or interior area common to all residential units within a residential building, which is designed and intended primarily for the leisure and recreation of the occupants of the building. It also recommended that amenity area be required on a per unit basis at the rate of 10 square meters per dwelling unit in the downtown and along the Princess Street corridor, and 18.5 square meters per dwelling unit in the rest of the city. It also recommended adding functional design standards, such as so that the length does not exceed 4 times the width. And also, if an amenity area is being provided as communal space, that they be grouped together into areas of not less than 54 square meters. And the amenity area study also recommended removing play space requirements from the zoning bylaws. Before the amenity area review study was undertaken, there was a separate review of amenity areas conducted by planning staff in 2007. And this review indicated that for 1 and 2 unit dwellings, a combination of setbacks, maximum lot coverage provisions, and minimum landscape open space provisions are used to preserve outdoor amenity space. And this review provided the following recommendations for the new citywide zoning bylaw. So it said that there should be a definition for landscape open space included in the new zoning bylaw, and that there should be provisions for the minimum amount of landscape open space. So we are bringing the recommendations of both of these studies forward through this proposed amendment. So it will implement the recommendations of the amenity area review study final report, and also proposes new landscaped open space requirements in the residential zones where they do not currently exist. Initially, it was thought that these amendments will be carried forward through the new zoning bylaw. However, since the new zoning bylaw is anticipated to take an extended period of time, we are undertaking these amendments in advance of the new zoning bylaw. So this amendment applies to all of the 5 principal zoning bylaws. It applies citywide. These are the areas that the various bylaws regulate. So with respect to zoning bylaw number 8499, that applies to the former city of Kingston, revisions are proposed to the definition of amenity area to align with the definition that was proposed through the amenity area review study. There's a new definition of landscape open space being added to this bylaw. There are revisions proposed to section 5.27 to require amenity area on a per unit basis for multiple family dwellings, and also to introduce functional design standards as recommended by Dylan. There are also revisions proposed to the Williamsville Main Street commercial zone to require amenity area at 10 square meters per dwelling unit as recommended by Dylan. And we are removing requirements related to play space from the zoning bylaw, and also adding new landscaped open space requirements in the residential zones at 30% of the total lot area. With respect to the downtown and harbor zoning bylaw, revisions are proposed to the definition of amenity area, and revisions to section 5.5 that speaks to amenity areas. So we are just revising that section so that amenity area is required on a per unit basis, not on a per bedroom basis, and also introducing functional design standards and removing requirements related to children's play area. With respect to zoning bylaw number 7626, adding a new definition of amenity area, because this bylaw does not contain any regulations related to amenity areas, and then adding new provisions in section 5 that would require amenity area on a per unit basis for dwellings containing 3 or more units other than row dwellings, and to introduce functional design standards, and removing requirements related to children's play area. The reason why row dwellings have been excluded, because they are generally ground-oriented type of a build form, and they have access, all of the units have access to a front yard and a backyard. So that's the reason why those type of dwellings are excluded from amenity area requirements. With respect to Cararaqui North, adding a new definition of amenity area, adding a new definition of landscape open space, adding requirements related to amenity area as suggested by the Dylan study, and then also adding new landscape open space requirements at 30% of the total lot area. And with respect to zoning bylaw number 3274, adding a new definition of amenity area, and then introducing new requirements related to amenity area on a per unit basis for dwellings containing 3 or more units other than row dwellings or linked dwellings, and to introduce functional design standards. And the same rationale behind not requiring these for row and linked dwellings is because they have access to front and backyard. So, so it was thought that the landscape open space requirements would provide for amenity areas. And that concludes my presentation. And notice for this application was provided in accordance with the Planning Act, and I have not received any written comments to date.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Councillor Neal.
Yes, I appreciate the play space is something that we've routinely on multi-res dropped, particularly those in the core that are clearly for purpose-built for students or built for single or young professionals. My concern is if it's a multi-res that's clearly being designed as a family multi-res, do we have the opportunity through site plan to make a strong recommendation that some of the public amenity space would indeed be playground related?
Thank you, and through you. So absolutely we do. We're just taking out a standalone requirement for child play space. It's more of a 1970s approach to zoning. So what we've tried to do is come up with what we think is a more appropriate ratio for multi-residential that also has some qualifiers about the amount of space contiguous together so that we really have functional space. We don't just have strips of grass and counting that as amenity space, and it's really not providing amenity to anybody. So through the process of site plan control and even through technical review, we definitely have the ability to have those discussions with applicants and work on solidifying that through a site plan.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? I have one about the landscaped area. Will this in general increase the amount of landscaped area that will be required for multi-residential units?
So the landscape open space requirements are being added to the residential zones where they don't currently exist. So yes, this is a new requirement. Yes, it will provide more landscape open space on those lots because this was not a requirement previously.
I'd like to open the floor to questions from the public. Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been following this along as it came through Planning Committee and at Council, and I think it's a big improvement. Some excellent work by staff and the committee, hearing from the community and from developers. So I think the process is working well. And I've got a couple questions just on the timing of when this will come in. You've got a number of applications that are in the pipeline now, right? So assuming this goes through tonight, it'll go to council. It could be probably approved there fairly soon. Would it then apply to the ones that are in the pipeline or only ones that are brought in after that time is one question. And you're not going to be enforcing this new set of regulations on properties that are already built, right? It'll only apply to ones that are coming forward from now. You're not going to go to complexes that were built 10 years ago and say, hey, you don't comply with the amenity space, you have to do this. You're not going to do that, right?
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Mitchell?
Hi. So I didn't quite understand this one as much, but I just had a couple things that popped in my head, so I forgive if I really don't understand planning. But so starting with, it said it was designed primarily for occupants. And so one of my questions is, and it's sort of, they're all tangents off this, but if I have a lot and I want to build a big building on it, that lot is required to have amenity space just for the occupants of that building, both internal and external, correct? Am I allowed to use adjacent properties or public properties as credit towards that amenity space would be one of my questions. And then, anyway, I was hoping the comprehensive report would get into some of this. So then, in different areas of the city, we have different qualities of neighborhoods. So in a downtown core, we're a lot more constrained. So I wondered about some of the ways we would go around this. So if I lived around Victoria Park, would Victoria Park influence the decisions on some of the development that would happen in that area? And what is the relationship between other open spaces, public or private, in terms of the decisions on the individual sites? I wondered about landowners who own multiple properties. So I'm going to pick on Queens, and this may be a totally preposterous thing, but let's say Queens decides to build residences, and they have all this property, and they've got a big field over here, or a sports field here or there. Are they able to use existing open spaces or playing fields and things in terms of credit towards the residences they build, or would we consider that differently because of constraints in a downtown core? And then vertical green space is the other one I wanted to explore, which is there are a lot of things in Europe and other places now where we're using the vertical landscape as much as we are the horizontal, and I just wondered how that would fit into amenity space as well in terms of development. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just see if there are any other questions before I ask Ms. Argawal to respond. Seeing none, if you could respond to some of these questions, please.
Through you, Madam Chair. With respect to the first question about whether these requirements would apply to projects that are in pipeline or whether they would apply to something that comes in after these regulations are in effect. So these will apply to projects that come in after these regulations are in effect. The existing development applications that we have were submitted when they are still subject to the existing regulations. With respect to enforcing them on existing development, these regulations will apply to future developments. They don't apply to existing developments because the existing developments are built in accordance with the existing rules. With respect to the next question regarding if the occupants, if the amenity spaces for the occupants use, and if they can use other public properties or get credit towards, or if a site is adjacent to a park or a sports field, does it get credit towards this? So no, these amenity area or a landscape open space requirement, it applies to a particular property that is proposing whatever form of development, or residential form of development. The parks, the public parks, and they are open to all members of the public. The intent of this amendment is that there will be some type of private amenity space proposed for the occupants of that building on the property. With respect to vertical green space, yes, amenity area can be provided as vertical green space. However, vertical green space will not count towards landscape open space requirements. So landscape open space requirements would require you to provide that type of open space at grade, open to the sky. It is, if a space is located, for example, on the podium of a building or on the rooftop, that doesn't count towards landscape open space. However, it will still count towards amenity area.
Thank you. And with that, I'll ask the committee if there are any further questions. Seeing none, I'd like to thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, our planners are available for questions at any time. Our next public meeting has to do with zoning bylaw amendment 94 Carruthers Avenue. And here we go. Thank you very much. If you'd like to come up and present.
Hi there. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am Catherine Morrissey. I am the homeowner, and I am also proposing the single detached home infill project at 94 Carruthers. We're proposing an infill project on an existing corner lot. We intend to live in the newly constructed home. We currently live downtown. We love the downtown lifestyle. We walk, we bike to work, we drop our kids off at daycare and school by walking and biking. We really do. We are the people that KEDCO talks about recruiting to the city. We came here for my partner to attend grad school. I intended to leave the day after he graduated. That was 11 years ago. We've purchased a home. We've raised our children in the downtown core. We're currently living on Nelson Street in one of those large lots that were mentioned tonight. We have a double wide lot that's 130 feet deep, but we are feeling a little squeezed out from our neighborhood right now. The neighborhood is in transition, and we're looking to move to a more family-oriented neighborhood, still in the downtown core, and more of a community is actually what we're looking for. In terms of this project, we do intend to live in the proposed home with our two children, who are 2 and 4, and raise our family in this home as our forever home. So the property location is a walkable neighborhood close to a variety of public amenities, commercial areas, and transit services. The Kingston Center, Princess Street, East and West Express Transit are all within walking distance. The immediate neighborhood includes a large neighborhood park, which is located directly across the street from the subject site. Housing is comprised in the neighborhood of single detached homes and low-rise apartments. So this is an illustration of the subject property as it currently exists. The property has 15.5 meters of frontage on Carruthers Avenue and 30 meters of frontage on College Street. The removal of the addition is our intention, so you can see the second box back there. We'll maintain a 1,350 square foot modest size home at 94 Carruthers with 3 bedrooms and a den on the second floor. The one-story addition as it exists now doesn't add much functional value to the home, and it has functioned as an in-law suite for a number of years prior to us acquiring the property. So I'm going to show you a few views of what we're proposing. So we proposed to the detached garage is to be removed. The photo shows the expansive front and side yards that will be maintained, as well as the outdoor amenity space. The College Street frontage illustrates the one-story addition that's to be removed. So these are the details of the existing property. It's 470 square meters, a single detached dwelling with a detached single-car garage. It was constructed in approximately 1950. The land use context is single detached duplex and multi-unit apartments. The official plan designation is residential, and the zoning bylaw is 1 and 2 family dwelling A zone. I have a few views here of the vicinity. So the top view is the existing property. The bottom view is the kitty corner, the apartment buildings that are located kitty corner. This is looking directly across the park. There are other apartment buildings, and you can see the subject property through the park. And again, just the surrounding area on the same block as the proposed property. So in terms of our sustainable neighborhood planning, the intensification that we're proposing is an acceptable sustainable neighborhood planning strategy that's supported by provincial and municipal land use planning policy. We're looking to increase the better use of the existing infrastructure, reduce the need for expanding infrastructure, make better use of the existing public facilities and services, and infill housing is recognized as a form of intensification that fills gaps in existing neighborhoods with new housing opportunities. So the top drawing illustrates the potential new lot with the addition removed. The bottom illustrates the new lot with the proposed home included. Note that the appropriate separation is provided between both existing homes. The walls forming the walkway between the existing and new dwelling would be constructed of fire-resistant materials as per the building code, including no windows. New landscaping on both properties will contribute to the aesthetics of this corner lot location, and in addition, we are requesting to build the porch on the new property, on the existing property on 94 Carruthers, to increase the space that's available for to really function as a nice yard. So again, the existing configuration of the property and the proposed configuration after the demolition of the garage and addition of the construction of the new home. So note that the new home is closer to the front lot line than neighboring properties, but it's still 6 meters from the sidewalk. The new home will be appropriately set back from the neighboring properties. The mid-sized garage at 90 Carruthers, which is the existing property at the top of the screen, will provide visual screening between the two properties. There's been limited windows planned between the new home and 367 College Street to the south, so the property to the right there, and the rooftop amenity area will only provide views across College Street to the park, and there's no shadowing or intrusive outlooking expected as a result of the introduction of the home. So this is what we expect it will look like on College Street. And this is what we expect it will look like from Carruthers Avenue, so in line with the existing properties. The conceptual elevations are shown. Just to note that the majority of the windows will focus to the street, minimizing views into the neighboring yards. And in terms of the zoning provisions, we're requesting relief from the existing A-zone provisions in the following areas. So for 94 Carruthers, the minimum lot area, 259 square meters. The minimum exterior side yard, 3.5 meters, and this is an existing situation. The minimum rear yard of 0.3 meters, minimum building depth of 11 meters. Again, this is an existing situation. The porch projection into the yard, 1.6 meters from the exterior lot line. With the new College Street home, we're looking at the minimum lot area of 211 square meters, the minimum front yard of 2.0 meters, minimum aggregate front yard of 1.8 meters, the minimum rear yard of 4.0 meters, the maximum lot coverage of 38.4%, maximum floor space index of 1.3, minimum parking space width of 5.2, and porch projection into yard of 0.75 meters from the lot line. So although there are a number of zoning amendments being requested, both the existing and proposed dwellings will function appropriately for the intended users, which is for single-family homes. So again, these are some of the zoning amendments previously listed, and the projection into the yards. So the zoning justification talks about the existing and proposed lots providing appropriate road frontage, vehicular access, and outdoor amenity area. The proposed dwelling's 2.0 meter front yard and new carport will provide sufficient on-site parking area. The new dwelling will be approximately 1.5 meters closer to the lot line than the existing dwelling's College Street frontage. The generous public boulevard will maintain 6 meters between the new house and the sidewalk. The minimum exterior side yard is 3.5 meters side yard at 94 Carruthers. It's an existing situation. The minimum aggregate side yard, the proposed side yards and registered easement will provide access to the rear yard on both sides of the new dwelling. With 94 Carruthers Avenue's generous side yard will provide approximately 100 square meters of amenity area, excluding surface parking and walkways. The new dwelling will provide approximately 70 square meters in the rear yard, and the adjacent park will provide larger recreational opportunities. The rooftop patio provides additional outdoor amenity space. The maximum building depth of the retained building is an existing situation. The new dwelling's 1.3 floor space index includes a basement area and attic living space, and excluding the basement would result in a 1.0 floor space index. We're requesting 1.3 in case the basement final design height is 7 feet, which would trigger the basement area being included in the floor space indicator calculation. The parking stall size, so the new dwelling's carport will easily accommodate a typical mid-sized vehicle. And since we live downtown, we bike everywhere and we only have one car. The maximum coverage for the new dwelling's coverage of 38.4 is only modestly above the 33.3% zoning provision. The projection into the yards, the proposed exterior side yard porch, and the new dwelling's front porch will be sufficiently set back from the sidewalk with about 5 meters from the sidewalk. The infill project is consistent with provincial and municipal policy regarding urban intensification. Design is compatible with the neighborhood, which includes an existing mix of building types and lot sizes. Zoning provisions will provide functional lot configurations for both the existing and proposed dwellings. The severance application will be submitted shortly for the lot division. So I welcome any questions or comments.
Thank you. Could I hear from staff, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, notification requirements for this application was provided in accordance with the Planning Act. 110 property owners were notified within a 120-meter radius, and a sign was posted on the property as well. No correspondence has been received on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, I would like to open the floor to members of the public. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this application?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I used to live very close to where the proposal is situated, so I'm 100% in support, and thanks for the great presentation. Just one small question. It would have a College Street address, right? Even though the property is now on Carruthers.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the public? Seeing none. Thank you very much for your presentation. Oh, sorry. Oh, Jim. Yes, Councillor Neal.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Just a quick afterthought. I guess the only neighbor, since I understand that you plan to live on the Carruthers Street home, will be your family home? Is that your plan? Or will...
We intend to move into the College Street property, the house that's
Okay.
illustrated in white.
Okay.
We currently own the Carruthers Street home, and we intend to renovate it to reconcile the
Okay.
weird choppy downtown
that isn't
layout.
a land use planning issue. I've just,
Okay.
I know I spoke to you earlier about that. Does the home to the immediate north on College Street have they had any issues with the planning of this, or have they brought any concerns to you or through our planner?
I could speak for them, or they could speak for themselves if they wish to.
Okay. I'll leave it to the chair, because normally
I'm not sure.
that has to happen during the public period, which is now over. I can talk to you afterwards if that's probably preferable. That would be good.
Normally, when I ask for members of the public, if you'd like to speak, that's the chance. But the planner is still here, and Councillor Neal is still here if you'd like to chat with them, and the owner, of course.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks.
May I respond?
Go ahead.
Prior to purchasing the home, we had drafted up an initial concept plan and spoken to the immediate neighbors on either side of the property to get their initial, not approval, but just to share our plans with them, because we want to live in this neighborhood with our family, and we don't want to have any hard feelings if people aren't comfortable with the plans going forward. So prior to purchasing the home, we did speak to the neighbors on either that would be directly affected by either side of the property, and spoke to as many other neighbors in the area who we knew. And we received very positive feedback. We did finalize the purchase based on the conversations that we had, and receiving some initial sort of consent from the neighboring homeowners. And we have tried as hard as we can to talk them through and be as transparent as possible. With every step along the way, we've had only positive feedback from the neighbors.
Great, I appreciate that. It's a great neighborhood, and I hope that the people who lived there before you organized the flooding of the Compton rink.
Yes.
And so I hope you join the working bee that keeps the rink there.
We'll take that under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your response. And with that, I will close our third public meeting. Thank you, everyone. We have a fourth public meeting, and it is to do with 271 Glencastle Road zoning bylaw amendment.
Hello. So, let me just get it set up here. So my application here is for a rezoning of the site that is currently zoned as a R13 zone in the zoning bylaw number 7626. The application is to amend the site-specific residential type R131 to the zone R173 zone to allow the construction of a second dwelling unit within the existing detached dwelling house. The property and the proposal both comply with the provisions outlined in the provincial policy and the official plan and the guide to building a secondary suite provided by the City of Kingston. So the proposal is compatible with the surrounding land uses. It is consistent with the applicable policies of the provincial policy statement, as I mentioned earlier, and it complies with the general intent of the City of Kingston official plan. So this is an excerpt from the recommendation provided by the Planning Department, that it be recommended to the Council that the application for the zoning bylaw amendment submitted by myself for the property municipally known as 271 Glencastle Road be approved, and that the bylaw 7626 entitled Township of Kingston Restricted Area Bylaw as amended be further amended, and that the Council determines that in accordance with the section 3417 of the Planning Act, no further notice is required prior to the passage of the law. So in my proposal, I'm proposing to convert the existing raised bungalow-style house from one residential unit to 2 dwelling units. No additions to the house are proposed. All changes are actually to be within the existing building. So the proposed units would be as follows. The main floor would be 3 bedrooms, washroom, kitchen, and a living room, and that's 133 square meters. And the entrance would be through the existing front door. And the front door is going to be modified so that both units can be accessed through the front door. The second dwelling in the lower unit is going to have 2 bedrooms, washroom, kitchen, and living room. It will be 88 square meters, and the entrance will be via the existing front door, which, as I said, would be modified so that both parties can enter right through the front entryway, and it's safe and accessible for both parties. Section 530E of the floor division. So the gross floor area of the building is 265 square meters. There is no change to this amount. The lower unit occupation of the gross floor area, this area was calculated in accordance with section 530E by excluding common utility spaces such as the hallway and utility rooms. The subject property is approximately 630 square meters in area with 18 meters of road frontage on the west side of Glencastle Road. There's a picture of the street view. The pavers as part of the proposal are being removed, and yeah, here's the current second level, and sorry, the pavers are that part beside the driveway there to accommodate more green space. So the current second level, this is the layout. It's really not the focus here, but you can see, just for your reference, that's the current layout. And then this is the proposed secondary layout, just a more open space. And the front entryway, you can see, will be shared by both units there and completely separated. Both units will be completely separated up to code, and I've had Dan Machado in there, our building inspector. Everything is separated by 5/8 drywall and safe and sound installation, and everything's done up to code, and the building department's inspected and made sure everything is going to go properly here. So, and then here's the current lower level. You can see there's a back entryway with a door there and stairs to a utility room, and there's a kitchen that's walled off from the utility room. And there's a garage on the right side there for you guys. And the entryway is at the front as well. That's 2 entryways that you're seeing there, one for the upstairs and one for the downstairs. In the proposed lower level, we'll be removing the wall to the kitchen just to create more open space. And I'll be removing the stairs at the back of the unit so the floor will extend over where the stairs would be, and there'll be a window there instead. And the main entryway will be through the front of the house, and there'll also be an entryway into the garage, which is accessed via a door that is a fire-rated door built up to code so that it seals off the garage properly. These are the actual dimensions of the house, length and width-wise. This is the lower level, and the upper level, I just put the width there. Just because it has an overhang that makes it a bit larger than the lower level. So as far as the guide to developing a second residential unit in Kingston, We followed this very carefully, and is located in a single-detached dwelling. It provides the required parking space for a second unit in tandem parking in the main driveway. It has a separate and visible access to the second unit through the front entryway, and it demonstrates that there is adequate servicing available, which there's the utilities and sewer system is all perfectly fine according to the appropriate departments. The guidelines also identify that there's a size limit to the secondary suite relative to the primary unit. The secondary suite or unit gross floor area can be no greater than 40% of the primary unit to a maximum of 90 square meters. The secondary suite maximum floor area calculations are as follows, and you can read them there. It currently is would take up 33% of the gross floor area. I'm not going to go through all of this, but these are just some of the parts of the provincial policy statement that highlighted the main parts here. They suggest that they want to promote efficient development and land use patterns which sustain financial well-being. That lines up with what we're doing with this house. And they want to provide it in a range of mix of residential and different types of buildings. And this is a residential house, so they want to minimize land consumption and servicing costs and promote economic development and community investment readiness. So I'll be living in the upstairs part of this house and renting out the downstairs unit. And this is definitely going to provide a good investment readiness to myself and to anyone that would own the house in the future if I decided to ever move. And also the policy outlines intensification within a settlement area, which represents efficient development. And that also is part of what we're doing here. The provincial policy statement also requires that the adequate water, wastewater, and drainage services are available for the second residential unit. Property is within close proximity to public transit. Public transit, there's an express bus about less than 5-minute walk down the road that comes every 20 minutes, I believe, during the regular service time. And that accesses all of Kingston. So the development conforms to all applicable regulations of zoning bylaw and relevant policies and legislation, and existing parking requirements are maintained, and the second residential unit parking requirements are met. Adequate open space and or amenity areas are available for all residents. There's lots of space outside the unit, lots of green space, as well as there's parks on both sides of the unit, one within a 2-minute walking distance and one within about 5-minute walking distance. So in conclusion, the Planning Committee has recommended that this be approved. And once again, here's a little excerpt from what they said here. In consideration of the planning application's planning justification, technical drawings, along with the applicable provincial and municipal legislation, it's concluded that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is desirable and constitutes good land use planning. In conclusion, the staff recommends approval of the application for zoning bylaw amendment to permit a second dwelling unit as a permitted use. That's my presentation, and if you have any further questions or need any further clarification, I'm happy to provide it.
Great, thank you very much. And could I hear from staff, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to confirm that the notice for this public meeting was published, posted, and circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. Approximately 141 properties were circulated on the mailing list. In response, we did receive 2 public comments, one by mail, and I believe the committee has that letter in an addendum tonight. In addition to that, I received a phone call, or rather I received a phone message today, and I tried to return the call back, but I was unable to connect with the person calling. I just want to reiterate also tonight that the item is also on for comprehensive tonight. It is on the regular meeting for a decision tonight as well. That's all.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Councillor Turner.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. You're in my district. You're actually a neighbor, so Thank you for your proposal tonight. You did a great job. I have a quick question about the second floor area. You're missing a door, I think. So if we're going to approve this, we need a door to go to the bedroom off the bathroom.
So for is like the upstairs, the upper
That
level?
one. See there, the bedroom? How do you get to the bedroom?
Oh, so, okay, I see, yeah. The door, yeah, sorry. I didn't realize that I missed that. There is a door there to the master bedroom from between where the bathroom is and the adjacent wall there. There is a door, yes. That just was missed there clearly.
Yeah, okay, just put your door there. And you were saying something about the pavers on the front for the parking? I wasn't clear on that.
Yeah, when I met previously with planning and the different departments, they suggested that the pavers be removed, and yeah, they're going to be removed. They were supposed to be removed earlier, but there was just a delay with the contractor getting it there on time, and I thought it was already going to be done, so yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions from the committee? I'd like to open this to the members of the public. Are there members of the public who wish to speak to this application? Mr. Dixon?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Excellent drawings and explanation. I just have one question as to the height of the windows above ground on the basement unit that you're planning to convert to secondary. Just as where that would apply as a cellar unit or a basement, because I know there are different definitions on that.
Yeah. So the question is about the height of the windows?
What I meant more in mind was actually I guess the height of the ceiling with respect to the distance above ground, right? So that's the factor that decides whether it's a cellar or basement. I guess perhaps staff could add more detail on that.
Yeah. I don't have the exact specific numbers right now. I can get back to you on that if you'd like. It is very high ceilings in there. The windows are about 3 feet, 3 feet in height. So they're very showed the house to my family and stuff, and everyone always comments that there's lots of light, lots of the basement windows are actually something that when I have friends over, they say, oh, it's very bright in here. There's lots of space, and people comment on the high ceilings as well, so I don't foresee that being an issue. I can get back to you with the specific measurements if you'd like, but as far as that goes, I don't foresee it being an issue, but yeah.
I think you're fine. Yeah. Building inspection, I take it you've had the building department, from what you said, they would have informed you if there was a problem with the ceiling height. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from members of the public? Any other comments, questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
And we'll be moving this to the business portion of our meeting. And that concludes our public meetings for this evening. And I'll now call the meeting to order and ask for an approval of the agenda with the added correspondence. Moved by Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Osanek. All those in favor? Thank you. And we don't have minutes. Pecuniary interest, any declarations? Nope. No delegations, briefings. Our business item is 271 Glencastle Road, the zoning bylaw amendment for a secondary suite. And there is a staff recommendation. Moved by Councillor Osanek, seconded by Councillor Turner. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Thank you, and that's carried. And our other item, this was also a very recent public meeting that we had, application zoning bylaw amendment, 1232 Highway 15, Riverview Phase B, be approved. And there is a recommendation. Moved by Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Neal. Comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you, that's carried. No motions, notices of motion, other business. We did receive the item of correspondence. Next meeting next month, July 6th. Motion to adjourn. Yeah, I can't move, can I? I'm obviously third night in. Councillor Turner and Councillor McLaren. All those in favor? Thank you.